Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be talking about creating income from screenwriting, which, if you're here, obviously that's something that's important to you, and that's something that's in either in your future or maybe happening in your present right now. But one way or another, our job is to do what we can to be able to help you move forward and being able to create that success. So here's our objective today to get you to the next level. And this is, I think, how you want to be thinking. A lot of times people go, oh, I want to jump from here all the way up there. And every once in a while that happens. It's exciting when it does. It's also really nerve-wracking. But the more logical path is just take the next step, right? And the next step might be it might be your first deal, right? It might be your first writing assignment, your first credit, your first produced movie, or maybe if you've already done one or more of those, a much bigger deal. The beauty of going in steps is that it allows you to get comfortable, to learn what the next thing is, to take a little more risk, to tolerate a little bit more stress, but at the same time, to ultimately become great at what you do, which is what we try to help people with. Now, two ways to make income as a feature screenwriter. Uh, and I'm showing you this because a lot of people know this one, right? This is the goal. We're going to sell a script and have it produced, right? But there's another one. The other way, which is actually much more common, is to do paid writing assignments. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people either don't know about or haven't heard about, or just weren't thinking, oh, those A-list screenwriters that are at the very top, it's like 90% of what they do is paid writing assignments. When when I've interviewed A-list screenwriters who worked on Marvel projects, sometimes they weren't the only one. Sometimes there were two or three of them that each one was paid to do a different draft. And I talked with one guy who said, he got paid $400,000 to write a first draft. Actually, what was ultimately end up being a first draft. And then he said two other writers got paid 400,000, and then they picked the one they liked the best, and they paid them the additional that ended up being about $1 million. It just depends on the situation. But paid writing assignments is something you should start thinking about as soon as possible because this is a major ticket into the industry. And it's also something that if you're looking to get an agent or a manager, they'll be wanting to know that you know what you're doing when it comes to this. So, three types of writing assignments. And this is, as soon as I say these, you'll go, oh, yeah, of course. Uh, First, you rewrite a script that the producer owns. Now, let me let me pause on this because there's a side to this that people just need to be aware of. Anytime a producer hires a writer to rewrite a script they own, that almost always means that the previous writer refused to make changes or couldn't make them, you know? So if you option a script to a producer, if you are on a project with a producer and they ask you to make changes, the thing I would be thinking about rather than worrying about the words, I would be saying, okay, this is my chance to shine. It's my chance to do an amazing job and to keep me on the project. Now, I hope that makes sense. We had a writer who didn't understand this. The producer asked for 8 changes, of which the writer actually agreed with 6. But because she didn't like 2 of them, she said she wasn't going to make changes. And the producer brought in another writer about 2 weeks later and fired her. It took us a year to get her back on her own project. We were lucky. The other writer didn't do such a good job. And so our writer went back to the producer and had made the changes in the script, and that got her back on. So if you're on a project, stay, right? It makes a huge difference. But if not, if you have a chance to work with a producer who is asking you to rewrite a script, that gives you an opportunity to do first to get paid, second to get some kind of credit, third to be able to work with a producer and to go through the process and learn how that works. Second type of paid writing assignment is to adapt a book. This one we hear about all the time. Uh, and the one caution I'd give you in this area, don't ever adapt a book that you don't have the rights to. Sometimes people have told me they have written a script and now then they go back to the author, and if the author says no, everything they just did didn't matter. So if you're doing it for a producer, they're going to have the rights. That's their job. Yeah, a producer's job is to do the business side, so they will have the rights in writing. And this just means you read through the book, you give them a take, and present something that could easily be made into a movie and could easily be marketed. You do that, and you're in business. And then the third one is to turn a producer's idea into a script. First time I heard about this, I was interviewing a producer at Universal, and she said she had had this idea for like 10 years, and she kept thinking that she was going to write it. And then at one point, she finally realized, you know what, that she just didn't have time. That just wasn't where her thoughts went. So a new writer came to her, and he just asked a simple question. He was pitching his project. She said no to it. And his question was, do you ever have an idea that you want someone to write? And the producer said, oh my God, yes, I do. Uh, and so he came on the project, and that movie ended up being about a $25 million movie that he got credit as the writer on the project because he wrote one of her ideas. So the beautiful thing about writing assignments when you're doing these is you already have a producer attached, right? You already have the person who is going to get it into the studio and get this thing made and shepherd it all the way through the process. So it's like a pretty positive situation. Plus, of course, you're getting paid. So let me give you a pathway to success here, and then we'll walk you through how to do writing assignments. And this is pretty simple. First, you learn how to write screenplays. And if you're here, my guess is you're already writing screenplays. You've probably written 2 to 5 screenplays. That means you've got this part down. Then it's about learning how to do paid writing assignments. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'll walk you through the process. And then if you would like to really master it, I'll show you a class that you can use for that. Third, then you start doing some of those writing assignments with small producers. Now, most people automatically think I got to go all the way to the top again. I'm going to tell you, for instance, we have one guy who has done writing assignments. He's done 17 of them. And I was interviewing him in front of an audience. He's somebody that I think he started working with us about 8 years ago. But when I was interviewing him, I said, so what kind of money are you making on these? And he goes, well, first 2, I didn't make anything. He said, from the third on, I made 6 figures plus. And I was like, okay, wow, good for you, man. So I said, let me ask you, now that you know everything you know, now that you've been through this process, would you go back to those original 2 that you didn't make any money? And actually what he did was he made nothing on the first one. He made 5,000 on the second. I said, would you go back to those 2 and do them again if you were starting over again? And he said, absolutely. He said, that's where I learned how to work with producers. That's where I got the process down, and I would have never gotten one of those $100,000 deals if I hadn't actually taken those steps. Now, we can make it so much easier for you, by the way. He didn't go through our writing assignments class because at the point at which he had joined us, we didn't have it yet. But this is a process that we've got down. So the reason why you work with small producers in the beginning is to get comfortable with it and get comfortable with how producers think and how they work. So once you've got that, you go get representation. I had a group of writers that I was introducing to managers 2 days ago, Monday night. We had a series of managers in, and we had about 8 writers that pitched them. A couple of them had done paid writing assignments, and the moment they said that, the manager acted completely differently with them. Because if you know how to do this, that means they're going to be able to, they have somebody they can sell. They have somebody that they can get hired inside this industry to be able to make things happen. Once you're doing that, then it's just about moving up the rungs until you get the kind of success that you want at the studio and streamer level. So this is a pretty easy process. It's a pretty clear path. We have had so many writers that have done this, and they're either at this level right now, or some of them are working at the studio level and interacting at that level. Uh, the job is to be able to do what will move you forward and create the kind of success that you want. So let's take a look at how these work. First, where do they happen? And I'll go through the level, the income, and the access on each one of these. Let's start at the top, studio and streamer level. The income on that is usually, first, it's usually A-list writers, and the income is usually between 250 to a million. It, depends on the situation. Some of them go higher. And it depends on your credibility, how much you've done. Again, when you're at A-list, you're going to be making pretty good money. Access on that, you need an agent or manager. And really at these top 2 levels, when you're going to big producers, it's kind of the same thing. On a big producer, they work with A to C list, 100,000 to a million. And again, you're going to need an agent or a manager to get in there. But let me tell you the breakthrough that we had that changed things for our writers. It's like most people, again, are trying to figure out, how do I jump up here? That's really difficult. That's especially when you're up against a lot of competition and that kind of thing. Plus, it's shocking to the nervous system. So the way you do it, a lot of times is you get like work with a small producer who has a streamer deal. And there are 5,000 of these out there. There are a lot of producers who have made some kind of streamer deal and maybe had a movie or TV series on there that you've never even heard of before. But you can find these people. We have lots of strategies for that. The income on that usually is low to mid income. It just depends on the situation, and it depends on what their next deal is. If they already have a new deal with a streamer and they need somebody to write it, then you're going to be getting more money, especially if they are in an urgent situation. If you're just coming to them and saying, hey, I'd love to work with you, and they just have something that's like on the back burner that they haven't thought about lately, then it'll probably be lower income. However, it will get you money for writing. And the beautiful thing is you can easily access them. These people, small producers, are often working out of their home. They're the one that answers the phone, right? They read their emails, those kinds of things. You can get to a small producer 20 times easier than a big producer. So it makes it easy for you to move up. As you get more credibility, then these big producers are going to become open doors to you. And that's what we're looking to do ultimately. The other way is to go to a filmmaker, like an indie director or something like that, and write for them. I'll tell you a story here, but they're easy access also. we had a writer who I interviewed at one point, and at the time, I had no idea who he was. I'd never even heard his name or seen anything about him. The I was talking with different managers, and they said, "Oh yeah, yeah, we have this new guy. Why don't you talk with him?" So they brought him in. He sits down, and I said, "Tell us about yourself." And he goes, "Well," he says, "I just made my first $1 million deal." And I was like, "Wow." After he told us about that, I said, "So, how did you get here? What process did you go through as a writer to be able to get to this point?" And here's what he told me. He said, for about 4 years, he wrote screenplays for small producers for $5,000 each. And I said, "Was there a reason there was 5,000?" And he said, "That was my expenses every month." So he wrote a screenplay a month for about 4 years. And he said at one point he had them stacked up all the way to his shoulders. And he looked at that stack and he thought, you know, if I just took this one step further and wrote a script for myself, he says, I'm a great writer now. These people love what I'm doing. It was the way he went from being a good writer to a great writer. Uh, and he took 1 month and wrote a script for himself, and that got him in the door, and he made $1 million on it. Now, after that, he did paid writing assignment after paid writing assignment at the studio level. So he started way down here with $5,000 scripts and continually moved up until he ended up working with the studios and had the success that he always wanted. My guess is he could have had that success about 5 times as fast if he would have just suddenly had that one big recognition that he had at the end, that one big breakthrough where he suddenly realized he could do this, right? The reason I'm telling you that is down here you might be getting 5,000, you might be getting 10 or 20 or those kinds of numbers. If you're talking a low budget indie filmmaker who has an idea but can't write at the level that you have, it's still a worthwhile thing. It gets you more income right now, but it moves you up the ladder and gives you the chance to make something amazing happen. So, basic steps. First one is the initial connection with the producer. How do you get to producers? Now, if you already have producers in your network, spectacular. The first thing I do is just go out to them, let them know that you're available. Now, by the way, you need to know what you're doing on doing writing assignments because it's a little different game than going than saying, "Oh, I'm just going to write a script of my own, and all that matters is what I think," and that kind of thing. Here, you're working with a producer, but again, the initial connection could be the producers that are in your current network, right? If you already know producers, if you've interacted with them, if you haven't, you could do it through marketing a screenplay. This is one of the ways that we have gotten writers to a lot of producers. They go out and pitch a screenplay that gets in the door. The producer sees their writing, and then they go back and let them know they're available. Or you could do it through getting recommended. Uh, and this is just real simple. All you do is let your network know that you're available for this. And if any of them end up having a conversation with a producer who wants something, they might recommend you. Now, this one's kind of a little bit long term because you don't know when that recommendation is going to come or who's going to recommend you to who or that kind of thing. But it's absolutely possible. We have a bunch of other strategies for marketing yourself. Those we'll show you when you're in the class. So, second thing, and this is the part where most people blow it, but the people who know what I'm about to show you ace this. So, what most people don't know is that there's an audition part to this process. Now, think about it this way. If you were going to hire somebody to work on your house, chances are you're going to ask for some kind of, what have they done before? Where have they been? Is there somebody I can call up that will tell me what it's like to work with you, that would recommend you, those kinds of things? Or you might have somebody come in and do one thing and then hire them to do a lot more. Uh, you're auditioning them essentially. And in this industry, if you think about like actors and actresses, uh, they get auditioned all the time. Anytime they're going out for any kind of role, they go in and do the part and see what happens. And they have no problems with it. I'm going to tell you, directors also get auditioned. Writers get auditioned a lot, even at the very top. At the very top, I was talking with one A-list screenwriter, and he said, uh, the way he got in the door on this one movie, this huge movie that had just been made, the way that happened was he and 17 other writers came in and did a pitch for the studio for a book that was turned into a movie. And he said he decided up front he was going to pitch it in a unique way because he knew everybody else would pitch it in the obvious way. And that got him the deal. But he had to audition, and that's at the top. So I want you to be okay with this, because when you're asking a producer to say yes to working with you for the next 3 to 6 months, uh, they're probably not going to say yes just based on your word. They're probably going to want you to do something. So producers hire writers that they know can do the job. That's important. So you show them you can do it, right? And this, by the way, showing them you can do it, if nothing else, it becomes practice. You go through an audition with a couple of different producers. By the time you've done that, you're going to be pretty skilled. Now, again, we can make it much, much, much easier for you. But you can show them that you can do it through a writing sample. You can show them through how you communicate. You can show them through your ability to discover their vision, or there's a bunch of other ways that each of them makes you more appealing to a producer because they need to see that you actually can do the job. Here's a couple of others. You present a take, and this is what the A-list screenwriter was doing with that book, right? And they were working with the underlying property in that case. But presenting a take means you're looking at the story and coming in with a fresh view of it, or something that you think would be more marketable, or would be something that would surprise the producer, or those kinds of things. Then this might be you presenting a treatment on their idea. We've had multiple writers who listened to what a producer wanted, and then went back and wrote a treatment and sent it to them and ended up getting the deal. It might be you presenting an outline of their story. And I worked with one writer where the producer called me and asked if I had a writer who was great at horror. So I said, yes, I have a bunch of them. What do you need specifically? He gave me some specifics. Out of that, I picked the writer that I thought would be best. We went and met with the producer for lunch. And the writer had had the chance to read the script, the old version of the script. And what she presented basically was an outline of how she would rewrite it. The producer looked at it and he loved part of it. And then there were some things that he didn't like. And she sat right there and rewrote the whole outline. She probably made 10 changes in front of him. And at the end of that, he hired her. Now, that was her being smart. It was her showing how she works with people. It was her presenting something unique up front. So she made it easy for him to say yes. You could end up writing a scene. We had a writer who got shoved out of a deal, and he called me up and he said, I know the producer had looked at like 5 different writers, but I was positive I was going to get this. And so I said, well, is there anything that you think of that you wanted to make a change in the script that had been originally written. And he said the opening scene was crap. And I was like, what if you rewrote it and sent it to the producer? So he did. He did that that night. And the next day, the producer came back and went, "Oh my God, the way you wrote that, I just loved it. Let's work together." And the producer actually, I don't know if fired is the right word, but chose not to work with the other writer that he had set up to hire. So that can make a difference in the situation. And then the other part of auditioning is responding to notes. Back to the horror writer I was telling you about. Uh, when she responded to his notes right in front of that producer, uh, that was part of what blew him away. He told me later on that he was watching her do that and just going, "Okay, I want to work with this writer." So this is about showing that you two can work together and showing them what the experience is like. Excuse me, hang on, let's go back here. Right? This isn't a small thing. Uh, there's almost any producer who has worked with writers either has they probably have one of both experiences. On one hand, they have the writers that they love, that they had a great time with, and that did the job. On the other hand, they have the ones that refuse to make changes, refuse to consider what their ideas were, thought that all that mattered was the words on the page, those kinds of things. And so they're all worried about whether or not somebody's going to be that kind of problem. And they're all looking for the kind of writer who is amazing and who will do whatever it takes to be able to make it happen. And in one way, this is an art. In another way, it's a business. But in a third way, it's also a way to grow who you are as a writer and to become amazing. So I always look at the audition part as a valuable experience. Now, let's go to the next step. Writing the script. Here, if they loved your writing sample, if they loved your audition, they're going to want you to write and work that way. So if you're bringing in a writing sample, let's say you're bringing in one for a comedy, and you're going to a comedy producer. If they went through and read your writing sample and it made them laugh out loud and they loved it and they enjoyed everything they read, that means you can do the job. Sometimes writers will say to me, what if they don't like my writing? And it's like, well, if you've submitted some kind of writing sample, which again could be, just an outline or a treatment, or you could be presenting an entire script that you wrote to show that you're really great at this, right? If you've presented a writing sample they like, then they're going to be happy with the work you do. Now, at this point, once you're hired, once you're working with the producer, your job is to discover the vision of the producer. And this is, a lot of times people think, oh, the producer already knows what they want. They've got this. And they make an assumption that the producer knows, and it's not always true. We've had lots and lots of times where the producer had like an idea, maybe they had a high concept, maybe they had an idea for a character, and now they're telling the writer, and in the midst of this, they don't have a story yet. So what I learned going through about 5 of these writing assignments myself was that the producer almost always is just like a writer. They have, you know how it is. You come up with an idea, you start working with it, you start writing, and about a couple of pages in, you go, "Oh, wait a minute, that's not what I want to write. It's this." Or you figure out a character and as you're going through the whole writing process, you don't have a story around it. And you might work with that character for 10 or 15 scenes before you figure out what the story is. They're the same way. So part of your job, if you're doing writing assignments, is to be that person who's there to help them figure out their their journey, help them figure out what their story is about. And I've done this with a lot of producers, and I've coached writers through it quite a bit. But I'll tell you on this one specific one, we met with this producer probably 5 times in person. Now you can do all of that on Zoom, but 5 times we met with him in person. The first 3 times, every time we showed him something, he said, "Oh, that's not what I wanted." And I'm looking at the stuff, and we got word for word what he said in the last meeting, but now he thinks it should be something different. So what I started doing after that, and by the way, we resurrected that when he said on the third one that that wasn't what he wanted. Then I went through and asked him 20 questions. We brainstormed back and forth. I wrote it all out right in front of him, turned it around, put it in front of him, and said, "Take a look, see if there's anything else you want changed." And he was good with it. By the next 2 meetings, we figured it all out. But once I understood all of that, then we came up with a whole model for how you discover the vision of the producer so that it keeps you from having to write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite and feeling like you're just never going to get there. The faster you can discover their vision and help them see it, the the faster you will get through this whole thing and be a huge success. Also, the faster you two will be in sync and will be working together, and it'll be a fun and creative experience for both of you. Then, writing the script, work from small to large. And by this, I mean start with the log line or the concept, get the producer's approval on it. And that's what happened up here. I had to learn. We've got to get the approval before we move to the next step. Once the producer is clear on the concept and you both agree on it, spectacular. Write a 1 page. And this is just simple. You're just kind of laying out the story. Take it from there to a treatment. Your 1 page is clearly 1 page. Your treatment might be 3 to 5 pages. Uh, make it as easy as possible for you two to get clarity every step of the way. Once you have approval on the treatment, move to an outline. Now you have an outline. That could be anything from 8 to 12 pages, depends on the producer. Some of them will want more, some of them will want less. You ask them. From there, you move to a first draft. And if you at each step got approval before you move to the next, by the time you get to writing, you will know this story inside and out, and they will have agreed to it. You'll be meeting their vision, and everything goes incredibly well. Now, a couple of other steps here. Make sure that you take notes efficiently and you make the changes. And when it comes to this, it's different if you're working on your own script and now somebody's giving you notes. It's almost like they're intruding. But if you're working well with a producer, this whole notes-taking process is you two kind of brainstorming back and forth like you're writing partners. And in that case, it's like it's easy to hear their ideas and go, okay, but what about this? And work back and forth. But when I say take notes efficiently, I mean, if you've written something, like let's say you're in the meeting and you've got 8 pages of notes from that meeting or something, which is excessive, but let's just say, what I would do is I'd go back, I would go through and say, what are the ones that are most important? I'd make sure that those are clear on the page. I would also then look to see, are there other things that you absolutely know for sure that the producer agrees with? I'd write that all up and send it back to them right then and make sure that they're agreeing with the notes and the changes that you're going to make. And then you make the changes and do your best. This is something where every time you show that you can do the job, they are going to be happier that they're working with you. So remember, it's not your script, it's the producers. That's important to remember. So I was talking with one of our writers who has done, I think she's done like 12 or so writing assignments. And she said she figured this out on the second writing assignment. It's not her script. She was protecting it like it was hers. Once she got that, then it's like, oh yeah, it's the producer, so I can do anything that I want on that. I can do anything they want, and as long as they like it, we're in business. We keep moving forward. And that's really important because that keeps you on the job. It also keeps you and the producer working together well, and it increases the chance this is going to get made into a movie. From there, then you want to make sure you bring it to completion with the producer. And let me say this, every once in a while, something happens along the way that isn't pretty. Uh, it's like sometimes people are under stress. Sometimes there's funding that didn't come in, and then they have to raise funding someplace else. Sometimes there's something else. But we had one writer, for instance, who the producer brought on a director. The writer had done 3 drafts. The director wanted to change everything. And now those two got in a conflict, the producer and the director. She had gone through our class. She knew exactly what to do and how to deal with it. She ended up being the person who was in between the two and was continually doing what took to move the project forward. The producer later on, this movie ended up it ended up showing up at Cannes. It was one of their new movies, and the producer called her after it premiered and said, "I just wanted to say thank you." Uh, he said, "This movie would have never been made if it wasn't for you." And it's true. The writer or the producer and the director got in enough conflicts that she was the one that kept it together. She was the one that made it happen. And that became part of her reputation. Was when producers talk about this particular writer, they know no matter what happens, she finishes the job. So that makes a big, big difference. Now, let me tell you the big secret here. This is the big secret that I didn't hear for most of the time that I was actually writing. Uh, I found it out later on. I went to the Writers Guild of America. I called up their library and I asked for them to tell me what percentage of income for feature writers comes from writing assignments versus spec scripts. And their answer at that point was a little over 80%. And this is the big secret. Most of the income for feature writers is from paid writing assignments. Once you know that, once you understand that, it's like, okay, this is not just an opportunity. This may be the way you break into this industry. This may be the easiest path for you. So, what do you need? The skills to start. And you already have most of these, writing a script, right? You know how to write a script. Of course, you can always improve. You can always elevate your skills. But if you've even written 2 scripts, you know what you're doing there. You know how to brainstorm, right? Which is part of the notes-taking process. You know how to rewrite. You've already done these things. So this gets you at least a couple of steps along the way. You very likely have some kind of writing sample that you could work with. Like if what you're going to do is write thrillers and you've already written one, even if that script couldn't sell, it can be your writing sample to get in the door. There are things I would recommend you do with that, but we can talk about those another time. But there are certain ways to create a writing sample or rewrite a writing sample that make it easier for a producer to say yes to you. Now, what are the other skills that you need? These are the skills to acquire. So if you want to do writing assignments, building your credibility, that's going to be important. A lot of writers don't think that they have the ability to build their own credibility in this industry, but credibility is what moves you up the ranks. So once you've had, let's say this, once you've had a script produced, you just moved up. By the way, if you've done a paid writing assignment for a producer and that takes you to another level of credibility that also increases the chance of your success. But as you have movie after movie after movie produced, sooner or later it's going to get you up to the level of A-list. It's going to get you up to the top of the industry. Your ability to audition. And I talked a little bit about that today, but this is a key to your success, and we have this down. Making the business decisions in your scripts. I asked one producer, I said, you know, what percentage, when you have somebody doing a paid writing assignment, what percentage of the time are you talking to them about business decisions in the script? And he goes, oh, half, a third, I don't know. He says it's often. So I asked the writers that have gone through our program and have done paid writing assignments, what percentage of the time, and they said between 30 to 40% of the time producers are talking to them about the business decisions in the script. These are things like budget, writing characters for specific actors, things like that, that we've got like 8 major business decisions that they're going to be talking with you about in your script. And if you're just not aware of them, they won't have quite the magnitude they need to. The ability to take notes, you may already be good at that. You may have gotten lots of feedback from other writers, but this is an art when you're dealing with producers because you've got to keep them in the game, and you basically need to hear what you need in order to be able to create. So a lot of times if you get feedback from somebody else and they give you 10 ideas, you might use 3 of them. With a producer, you may have to use all 10, and you may need to be asking the right kinds of questions to be able to implement some of those. The ability to work with producers. This is incredibly important. And if you look out there on some of the Facebook groups, what you'll see is a lot of writers telling other writers not to make changes, not to do the improvements, not to take notes, not to interact. They'll tell them all kinds of things that are anti-producer. What they don't understand is the producer, when you're working with a producer on a writing assignment, that is just as good as working with your manager. You've got somebody who is there who wants to make the movie you're making. So it becomes incredibly important that you have this skill set and that you're open to it. Please don't listen to those naysayers out there. They're essentially ruining your chance of making it in this industry. So be careful about that. And then how to approach producers. This is such an important skill. If you don't know any producers right now, then when we get to this, make sure you pay close attention to it. We have all kinds of strategies for approaching producers, but the most important thing is, who are you in that situation? And if you are right now, if you're nervous and worried about approaching producers, once you understand how to do it right and how to do it in a way that makes sense in their world, you can feel completely comfortable and calm. And you can feel confident interacting with them because you know what you're doing. This is part of the reason why I spent so much time interviewing producers. Over the last 20 years, I've interviewed about plus or minus about 600 producers. I've also interviewed over 100 agents and over 100 A-list screenwriters. So we did all of this so that we would know exactly what worked. And then, of course, there's making the deal. And you want to make sure that coming in the door, especially when you're brand new, most people think that they can't negotiate or they can't interact on the making the deal part, that it's either a do or die kind of thing. You want to be able to have that conversation and to know that you know what you're doing. So this is something that we're also going to walk you through. Now, let me just show you the class so you know what it is. And here's just a few more points. What this does is it has you be of value to producers. And what it really means is Every time you pitch a script to a producer or send a query letter, or if you do one of the Zoom meetings or phone calls or whatever, if you're interacting with any producer, if you can do paid writing assignments, you have two ways you guys can work together. Either you work together on your script or you work together on their project. And it makes it a lot easier for you to succeed. Over time, you can become a paid screenwriter. You can get IMDb credits, movies made. You'll become more attractive to managers and agents. This we just saw on Monday night. It was like the two people in the room who had done paid writing assignments. When they said that to the manager, in both cases, managers changed how they talked with them. They were like, oh, wow, okay, you've done paid writing assignments. Good. Because what that means is they now can sell you into this market, right? They can sell your services as somebody who can write screenplays for producers. It's incredibly important. So this is the class. Oh, hang on, I'm sorry. This is one of our writers here. Anthony Catino, by the way, took this class and he ended up at the point at which I put this up, he had had his third paid writing assignment. This movie got made. It was on Netflix International. And it's like he said he would have never survived that deal. He said the producer, when they first came on, was ready to fire him right at that point, and a manager had brought him in for it. He had made contact with them, and then they'd brought him in. But the producer was ready to fire him early on, and he showed the producer he knew what he was doing, and he was going to help him. And it was because of him that that movie got made. Now, since then, he's done two others. So this has been a pretty consistent thing for him. So here's the class. First, we'll go through, and we've talked a little bit about this tonight. This is about half of what we talked about was this, how paid writing assignments work. From that point, it'll be how do you create strong credibility? Then how to choose a specialty, something you're going to present yourself as an expert in, because producers hire experts. So let's say you've written in 5 different genres. At this point, you're going to pick one and you're going to become twice as good at it in some very specific areas. And if you do that, then you'll be able to go in and say, this is my specialty, or this is my field of expertise. It makes it a lot easier for them to say yes. From there, I'll give you the key business decisions that are in every script that gets made into a movie. Those are going to be important because producers are talking to you about those at least 30% of the time. Then we'll look at your writing sample, and the question here is, will it get you hired? And even if, let's say that you only have a 10-page writing sample. Let's just say you wrote something that was a short, but it was really well written. The job will be to make it twice as good so that when you present it to a producer, they will look at it and go, oh my God, this writing's incredible. If you've written a full feature script in that particular genre, then your job will be to go through it and look at it entirely from how a producer's going to hire a writer. Is it something that the moment they start reading, they start saying yes? Because that's what you want. You want them to say yes. Then it's about how to become invaluable to producers. And we've got a set of strategies that came from a bunch of producer interviews I did here. Once you understand this, you will know exactly how to interact with them, exactly how to present yourself in a way so that they'll say, oh, the best decision I ever made was hiring that writer. Mastering budget. This doesn't mean going and getting a budget on your project. This means understanding what producers need in the script that has to do with budget. So we'll give you a whole series of ways to raise the budget or to lower it so that if suddenly the producer comes in and says, hey, we thought we had 30 million to do this script. Now we only have 7. What can you do? You will be the person that saves the day, right? Because you will be the one who knows how to lower the budget inside the script. So many times a writer can make sure that the movie gets made just because they made the right decisions here. From there, now it's about auditioning for writing assignments. We talked about that a little bit tonight. I kind of walked you through the what's. In this, we'll be walking you through the how to audition so that you'll know exactly what you're doing and you'll ace it. You will do better than 95% of the writers who tried. Then it's about taking notes and solving problems. We've talked about taking notes tonight. We didn't talk about solving problems. There's specific problems that come up when you're working in these, and we have solutions to all of those. From there, pricing strategies. And on this side, this is the part about getting them to say yes to whatever your price is. On this side, qualifying producers, this is about making sure that you're working with producers, that it's going to be a valuable experience for you. You know, sometimes people come to me and they say, I have an author who wants to be the producer on their own movie. Should I work with them? And it's like, okay, that's a qualifying question. They're trying to see, is this person qualified to be able to do this project? It's important to know. I'm not saying anything bad about authors. I just want you to know this. We've had probably 8 writers who have signed on to deals with authors who the movie never ever got made. And the reason why was because the author wasn't a producer. They didn't know that game. They didn't know what the job was even. So after that, we started being really careful about qualifying producers. And it's not just the ones who are authors. It's also, people who have only done shorts, but they've been a producer on the shorts. There's like 5 different places that you need to be able to qualify them. And it's easy to do, and then easy to make the right decision once you know. And then how to market to producers. So this is the other part that I think most people are missing, which is how do you get in those doors? And so by the time you get to this, we'll give you a series of strategies that have worked for about 130 writers that in our group that have already made writing assignment deals. Most of those people went on to make more deals. The thing I didn't tell you was we have lots and lots of writers who have done 3 paid writing assignments with producers, but we also have people who have done 11, 12, 15, 20, and 25. It's like if you want to make this into a full-time position where you're actually making money consistently by doing this, we have all the strategies for that. And we've had people who have been completely successful at it. So the normal price on this is $250. This class starts on January 27th. Let me give you a special that is for the first 10 people that sign up. You can get in for $149. That saves you $100 on this. The class again starts January 27th, which is about 10 days from now, plus or minus. All you got to do is go to this link right here. Just write this down, bit.ly, bit.ly /WA class. So that's writing assignment class, bit.ly /WA class. No dashes, no spaces, no capitals on that. Just put it in like that and click return. Put it into your browser where you normally put a web address. Click return and join us for this adventure. And just be keeping this in mind as you're thinking about this. If you see yourself moving forward as a writer and you want to start actually stepping into the industry and starting to give your writing a real chance at success, having the ability to do writing assignments at a high level can just catapult you up the ladder. It really makes a tremendous difference. If you want to get an agent or manager, this is one of the big keys. Remember, with agents and managers, what they do is they sell you and your scripts, but they also sell your ability to work with producers to write their scripts. And based on what the WGA said, it's about 80% of the time that income is based on paid writing assignments. So if you want to get an agent or manager, being able to come in the door saying you've already done paid writing assignments is a much, much easier path to be able to make that happen. So again, just write this link down, put it in your browser where you normally put a web address, click return, and begin this journey that ultimately will give you a much, much better chance of success in this industry. So thank you guys for being with me tonight. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, wishing you the absolute best on your writing. And if you join us for this, I know you have a much better chance at success. Good talking with you all. Bye-bye, everyone.